She called Judge Judy old, emotional, and hormonal on live television, in front of millions. Big mistake. Huge mistake. Because what this 320-pound professional scammer didn't know was that Judge Judy had spent 3 weeks uncovering a fraud operation so massive, it would send her to prison and cost her over $400,000. For 5 years, this woman had perfected the art of fake discrimination lawsuits, targeting immigrant families, destroying their businesses, stealing their life savings. 23 lawsuits, 11 settlements, 0 consequences. Until she insulted the wrong judge and discovered that karma doesn't forget. It just waits for the perfect moment to strike. What you're about to witness is the most brutal, most satisfying, most absolutely devastating courtroom takedown in television history. And it all started with one insult that this woman genuinely thought would intimidate the judge. Instead, it unleashed fury so calculated, so thorough, that by the end of this case she had nothing left. Stay watching, because the moment she opens her mouth to deliver that insult, you'll see her entire world begin to collapse. For over half a decade, a woman named Karen Davidson had mastered something truly sinister. She'd turned civil rights protections into a personal ATM machine. At 47 years old, this 320-pound strategist had developed a system so calculated, so methodical, that she was pulling in 6 figures annually without holding down a legitimate job. Her weapon of choice? False discrimination lawsuits filed against vulnerable small businesses owned primarily by immigrants. Davidson's operation was sophisticated in its simplicity. She would arrive at establishments on a mobility scooter, despite having 0 medical documentation requiring one, with her smartphone recording every interaction. Her targets were always the same demographic: family-owned gyms, restaurants, boutiques, and service businesses operated by first-generation Americans who had scraped together everything they owned to open their doors. The setup followed an identical blueprint every single time. Davidson would become a customer, then immediately demand modifications or accommodations that would require tens of thousands of dollars in structural changes or specialized equipment. When business owners explained their financial or insurance limitations, she would erupt with accusations of fat-shaming and disability bias. Within days, coordinated negative reviews would saturate their social media. Within weeks, legal papers would arrive demanding anywhere from $15,000 to $50,000 for emotional damages. What made Davidson exceptionally dangerous was her insider knowledge. She'd previously worked as a paralegal before being terminated following half a dozen complaints about creating toxic working conditions. During that time, she'd learned a critical fact. Defending against a discrimination lawsuit costs small businesses approximately $20,000 in legal fees, even if they win. Most owners, especially immigrants who feared being labeled discriminatory, would quietly settle for $10,000 to $15,000 just to make the nightmare disappear. Her track record over 5 years revealed the scale of her operation. 23 lawsuits, filed across multiple categories of businesses, 11 settlements secured, generating a combined total of $127,000. 0 cases taken to trial, because Davidson always withdrew once businesses demonstrated they would fight back. She was harvesting settlements like crops, and each victim thought they were dealing with an isolated incident rather than becoming another mark in a serial scammer's portfolio. Davidson specifically hunted vulnerable prey. She maintained detailed surveillance files on local businesses, tracking their financial health, ownership backgrounds, and online reputation. Her ideal victims were immigrant entrepreneurs, Korean dry cleaners, Vietnamese nail salons, Chinese restaurants, Latino family gyms, people who had mortgaged everything to live the American dream and who couldn't afford prolonged legal warfare. The true evil in her scheme wasn't just the financial extortion. She was actively harming legitimate discrimination victims by making their claims appear less credible. She was exploiting laws designed to protect vulnerable populations, twisting those protections into instruments of abuse. And she had gotten away with it for years because nobody had connected the pattern linking her various lawsuits across different jurisdictions. But Davidson's fatal flaw was hubris. After 5 years of victories, she'd grown dangerously overconfident. She genuinely believed her system was foolproof, that she was smarter than everyone she targeted. That arrogance was about to lead her to make 3 catastrophic errors: targeting the wrong business owner, putting her extortion demands in writing, and underestimating the judge who would ultimately expose her entire criminal enterprise to the world. Marcus Chen's story embodied everything beautiful about American opportunity and everything tragic about how easily that opportunity can be threatened. At 34 years old, this Taiwan-born entrepreneur had spent nearly 2 decades building toward his dream of business ownership. He'd arrived in America at 16, speaking virtually no English, working multiple minimum wage jobs while completing high school, just to help his family survive in their new country. Through sheer determination, Chen saved enough to attend community college for business management. By his late 20s, he'd accumulated the down payment for a modest commercial space in a working-class neighborhood. By 33, his FitLife gym had become a thriving community hub, offering affordable memberships to families priced out of corporate fitness chains across town. Chen had created something remarkable beyond just a business. His gym featured childcare areas where single mothers could work out while their kids played safely. He offered morning Tai Chi classes for elderly immigrants. He ran martial arts programs teaching discipline to at-risk teenagers. His 4.9-star rating across all review platforms reflected genuine community love. He provided free memberships to low-income families who couldn't otherwise afford fitness access. With his wife pregnant with their second child and plans for a second location underway, Chen was living proof that the American dream remained achievable through hard work and integrity. Then Karen Davidson entered his life, and everything transformed into a waking nightmare. It started when Davidson joined the gym and immediately demanded equipment modifications that would cost $40,000 specialized, machines rated for 500 pounds with custom safety features. Chen tried every reasonable accommodation. Modified equipment alternatives, personalized training sessions, flexible scheduling, anything within his actual financial and operational capabilities. Davidson rejected every option, escalating her demands with each conversation. When Chen finally explained he couldn't meet her requirements without bankrupting his business, Davidson sent him an email that would later become the smoking gun in her destruction. "Just pay me $50,000 or I'll destroy your business online." That message, that moment of pure arrogance where she documented her extortion in writing, should have been Chen's salvation. Instead, it became the beginning of 14 months in absolute hell. The lawsuit arrived 6 weeks later. Despite having clear evidence of extortion, Chen quickly discovered that the legal system doesn't operate on justice alone. It operates on money and time. He burned through $18,000 in attorney fees just navigating preliminary hearings. Davidson's lawyer, a notorious personal injury specialist who handled all 23 of her cases, knew exactly how to drag proceedings out, filing motion after motion, demanding discovery that cost thousands more, delaying every possible step. Meanwhile, Davidson launched comprehensive warfare across every digital platform where FitLife Gym maintained a presence. 1-star reviews flooded in from fake accounts, all claiming discrimination and fat phobia. She posted in local Facebook groups with fabricated stories about Chen humiliating her publicly. She created YouTube videos titled, "Immigrant Gym Owner Hates Fat People," that gained traction in body positivity communities. The results were devastating. Gym membership dropped 40% within 3 months. Loyal families who'd been members for years started questioning whether they wanted to support a business accused of discrimination. Chen's pregnant wife cried herself to sleep nightly, terrified of losing everything they'd built. Their 3-year-old son asked why mommy was always sad. But Marcus Chen possessed something that separated him from Davidson's previous 11 victims. Absolute moral certainty that he'd done nothing wrong, combined with immigrant-forged stubbornness that had carried him from teenage newcomer to successful entrepreneur. Instead of giving Davidson the payoff she expected, Chen made a decision that changed everything. He hired a private investigator. Within 2 weeks, that investigator uncovered Davidson's complete pattern. Identical complaints filed against different businesses, the same attorney representing every case, settlement amounts calculated to be just below the cost of fighting back, and social media posts where Davidson bragged about her income from lawsuits, including one particularly damning message. "These idiots always settle, LOL. Easiest money I've ever made." Chen had the evidence. Now he needed a platform powerful enough to expose it. That's when his attorney mentioned a connection that seemed almost providential. A producer for Judge Judy's television show, currently seeking cases involving small business owners fighting fraudulent claims. Chen submitted his evidence expecting nothing, hoping for a miracle. 3 weeks later, he received the call that would transform his life. Judge Judy Sheindlin herself had reviewed his case and wanted it on her show. But the producer added something else that gave Chen his first real hope in months. Judge Judy doesn't just hear cases, she investigates them thoroughly. And when she finds fraud, she destroys it completely. Marcus had no idea just how thoroughly Judge Judy was about to dismantle Davidson's entire operation. Judge Judy Sheindlin had built her legendary reputation on one unshakable foundation. She could identify a liar within seconds of them speaking, and she maintained zero tolerance for people who abused the legal system to harm innocent individuals. At 78 years old, after 25 years as a Manhattan family court judge handling over 20,000 cases, she'd developed what colleagues described as an almost supernatural ability to recognize patterns of fraud and manipulation. When Marcus Chen's case landed on her desk, every judicial instinct she possessed started signaling that this was bigger than one lawsuit. This was systematic predation. She assigned her research team to dig deeper than they'd ever dug before, and what they uncovered made her blood boil with righteous fury. Judge Judy's team worked 3 solid weeks building an airtight case. They contacted every business Davidson had sued. 11 confirmed they'd settled rather than fight. They obtained security footage from 4 different establishments showing Davidson walking normally without assistance, directly contradicting her disability claims. They subpoenaed her medical records, which she'd legally consented to when she made her health conditions a lawsuit issue, revealing that multiple physicians had documented she had no physical limitations requiring mobility aids and that she'd refused every treatment recommendation for weight management. They recovered her social media history, including posts she thought she'd deleted, where she discussed targeting small businesses and boasted about settlement income. They interviewed neighbors who described her as calculating and manipulative, people who'd watched her walk normally to her car, then use the mobility scooter for public appearances. But the most damning evidence came from Davidson's financial records. Judge Judy's team tracked every settlement payment, every lawsuit filing, every business targeted. The pattern was undeniable. Davidson had generated $127,000 in 5 years from settlements alone, with no other reported income. She was a professional lawsuit filer, who'd transformed discrimination claims into a full-time career. Judge Judy had encountered scammers before, but Karen Davidson represented something particularly disgusting. She was actively harming real discrimination victims by making their claims seem less credible. She was destroying immigrant families who'd worked entire lifetimes to build something, and she was exploiting legal protections designed to help vulnerable people, twisting those protections into weapons of extortion. Judge Judy decided this case would be the one, where she made an example so devastating, it would be remembered for years. The Judge Judy courtroom buzzed with typical electric energy as cameras rolled live, capturing what everyone assumed would be routine small claims drama for millions of American viewers. Production assistants completed final checks, the bailiff took position, and the audience settled in expecting the standard entertainment they'd come to love. Nobody in that room realized they were about to witness television history. Karen Davidson rolled in on her mobility scooter with theatrical flair, worthy of a stage performer. She wore an oversized muumuu covered in body-positive slogans, her blonde hair freshly highlighted, makeup applied with camera-ready precision. She carried 3 bulging folders of what she labeled evidence, mostly internet printouts from legal advice websites and disability rights blogs. Her confident smirk told everyone watching that she believed victory was already secured before speaking a single word. Her assistant helped her transfer from scooter to defendant's chair with exaggerated difficulty, a performance designed to emphasize claimed physical limitations. Davidson shot confident glances at cameras, already imagining herself going viral for all the right reasons, already mentally spending the $50,000 she expected to extract from Marcus Chen. Marcus sat quietly in the plaintiff's chair, his pregnant wife beside him, both clutching their folder of security footage and evidence, their last hope to save everything they'd built. Across the aisle, Davidson's presence seemed to dominate the entire space with aggressive entitlement. She muttered loud enough for microphones to capture, "This should be quick, and some people just don't understand civil rights." The gallery was packed with gym members supporting Marcus, other small business owners who'd settled with Davidson, and people who'd heard about the case through social media buzz. The atmosphere felt different from typical Judge Judy episodes, heavier somehow, like everyone could sense something significant about to unfold. Judge Judy reviewed her notes one final time, that slight smile playing at her mouth corners, the smile experienced viewers recognized as calm before a devastating storm. Judge Judy opened proceedings with signature efficiency, her voice cutting through courtroom air with surgical precision. Mr. Chen, you're suing Miss Davidson for filing a fraudulent lawsuit against your gym. Miss Davidson, you're countersuing for $50,000 claiming disability discrimination. Let's start with you, Miss Davidson. Tell me what happened at FitLife Gym. Davidson didn't just answer. She launched into a theatrical performance. Your Honor, this man completely humiliated me publicly by refusing to accommodate my disability, she began, voice dripping with practiced victimhood. I have severe mobility limitations requiring specialized equipment. And when I simply requested reasonable accommodations as required by law, he told me I was too fat for his gym. The lie was so blatant, so perfectly delivered, it was clear she'd told this exact story many times before. Then Davidson made her first critical mistake. Instead of sticking to facts, she started editorializing, rolling her eyes dramatically at Marcus and adding commentary. As anyone who understands disability law would, no, obviously he has no respect for people with my condition, ois. Judy's eyebrows raised slightly, the first warning sign experienced courtroom observers knew meant trouble was brewing. Miss Davidson, she interrupted, tone still professional but with steel underneath. I didn't ask for your legal analysis. I asked what happened. Tell me the facts without commentary. The audience could feel the energy shift, that moment before lightning strikes when air becomes electrically charged. But Davidson, blinded by 5 years of successful manipulation, completely missed the warning. Instead of backing down, she doubled down on disrespect. She let out an exaggerated sigh, the kind reserved for incompetent customer service, and said with unmistakable condescension, Well, if you'll let me finish my story, Your Honor. I was trying to explain the legal context that's clearly relevant here. The courtroom went absolutely silent. Even camera operators seemed to freeze. The bailiff's hand moved slightly closer to his position, instinctively preparing for whatever was coming. Marcus's wife squeezed her husband's hand so tightly her knuckles turned white. Judge Judy leaned forward, her famous steely gaze locking onto Davidson like a heat-seeking missile acquiring its target. Excuse me, she said, voice dropping to that dangerously quiet tone that made seasoned attorneys break into cold sweats. Did you just sigh at me in my courtroom? Did you just suggest I don't understand what's relevant? The question hung in the air like a sword suspended by thread, ready to fall and sever everything in its path. Davidson, incredibly, seemed to think this was still going according to plan. She had no idea she'd just lit the fuse on a legal bomb about to explode and destroy everything she'd built over 5 years of fraudulent lawsuits. What happened next would become the most viral courtroom moment in internet history, shared across every platform, watched by over 50 million people, and studied in law schools as an example of what happens when arrogance meets expertise. Karen Davidson actually smirked at Judge Judy. Not just a small smile, a full condescending smirk, screaming her belief that she was smarter than everyone present. She turned slightly toward the audience as if about to share an inside joke about how unreasonable this judge was being. Judge Judy's response was swift and surgical, her voice carrying 25 years of judicial authority and exactly 0 patience for manipulative liars. Miss Davidson, let me ask you some simple questions, and I want simple answers. How many gyms have you joined in the past 5 years? Davidson's confident expression flickered momentarily. Maybe 4 or 5. I don't keep track. How many of those gyms did you actually use? Judge Judy's eyes never left her face. Davidson shifted in her chair. That's not relevant to this case. Judge Judy's voice went colder. Answer the question. How many businesses have you filed lawsuits against in the past 5 years? Davidson's face started showing first signs of real concern, the realization that someone had done their homework, that this wasn't going to be the easy victory she'd anticipated. The tension was building like a pressure cooker about to explode, and Davidson made the catastrophic decision to go on offense rather than retreat. She sat up straighter, voice taking on aggressive edge. Your Honor, I don't appreciate the hostile tone. But you represent a special kind of evil. You exploit laws designed to protect vulnerable people. You weaponize legitimate social issues for personal profit. You destroy families who have worked their entire lives to build something meaningful. You are not an advocate. You are a predator. And your predatory behavior ends today. The courtroom held its collective breath as Judge Judy continued, each word landing like a judicial sledgehammer. I find in favor of the plaintiff, Marcus Chen, on all counts. Miss Davidson, you will pay Mr. Chen $50,000 for filing a fraudulent and malicious lawsuit against his business. You will pay an additional $18,000 to reimburse him for every penny of legal fees he incurred, defending himself against your extortion scheme. Total judgment $68,000 due immediately. Davidson's shriek pierced the courtroom like a siren. I don't have that kind of money. I can't pay that. You can't do this to me. Judge Judy's smile was absolutely merciless. Then you will liquidate your assets, Miss Davidson. Your house, your car, your mobility scooter that you don't actually need. Everything you own will be sold to pay this judgment. And if that's not enough, your wages will be garnished for the rest of your working life until every penny is paid. But Judge Judy wasn't finished delivering consequences. She had one more devastating blow. Furthermore, I am referring this case to the District Attorney's Office for Criminal Investigation. The evidence presented today suggests fraud, extortion, perjury, and conspiracy to commit wire fraud. If prosecuted and convicted, Miss Davidson, you are looking at 5 to 7 years in state prison. Davidson collapsed back into her chair, hyperventilating, her face a mask of absolute horror as reality finally penetrated her thick armor of entitlement. The woman who'd walked into the courtroom expecting an easy $50,000. Payday was now facing bankruptcy and potential prison time. Judge Judy saved her most devastating blow for last, the one that would ensure Davidson could never simply move to another city and restart her scam. I am also releasing my research team's complete findings to every business you have sued in the past 5 years. They will be notified that they have grounds to file countersuits to recover their settlement payments, as those payments were obtained through fraud. Based on the evidence we've compiled, Miss Davidson, you could be facing over $500,000 in total liability from civil suits alone. Davidson tried to speak, but only incoherent sounds came out. Her carefully constructed world had been completely destroyed in less than 30 minutes. Judge Judy delivered her final statement with cold satisfaction of justice perfectly served. You came into my courtroom thinking you could manipulate me the way you've manipulated everyone else. You thought calling me emotional and hormonal would intimidate me into backing down. Instead, you gave me the motivation to ensure your fraud is exposed to the widest possible audience. Millions of people are watching this right now, Miss Davidson. Your face, your name, your pattern of behavior will be shared across every platform. You will never be able to run this scam again. This is what happens when consequences finally catch up with people who think they're untouchable. Marcus Chen stood, tears streaming down his face, barely able to speak through overwhelming relief. Thank you, Your Honor. You saved my business. You saved my family. You saved my life. Judge Judy's expression softened slightly as she addressed him. Mr. Chen, you did something incredibly brave by refusing to settle and by fighting back. Go take care of your gym, take care of your family, and know that you've helped protect every other small business owner from becoming her next victim. Marcus's pregnant wife was openly sobbing, hugging her husband, the weight of 14 months of terror finally lifting from their shoulders. The gallery erupted in spontaneous applause, something rare in Judge Judy's courtroom, but the judge allowed it this time. Davidson was being escorted out by bailiffs, still crying, still screaming about how unfair everything was, how she was the real victim, how nobody understood her pain. Her last visible moment on camera showed her face twisted in anguish. The perfect encapsulation of entitled arrogance, meeting absolute accountability. Within 1 hour of the episode airing, the clip of Davidson's menopause insult had already hit 500,000 views on social media. Within 3 hours, it crossed 2 million. By the end of the first day, over 15 million people had watched Karen Davidson's complete destruction across YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram. The hashtag #MindYourMenopause began trending worldwide, but not in the way Davidson could have ever imagined. It became a rallying cry against entitled behavior. shorthand for the moment when arrogance meets consequences. Meme creators had an absolute field day. GIFs of Judge Judy's death stare were shared millions of times. Reaction videos flooded every platform. Legal analysts appeared on news programs discussing the case and praising Judge Judy's thorough investigation. The story was picked up by major news outlets with headlines like television, Judge exposes serial lawsuit scammer, and fraudulent discrimination claims cost woman everything, running across multiple networks. The real-world consequences for Karen Davidson were swift and absolutely merciless. Within 1 week, her bank accounts had been frozen pending judgment payment. Within 2 weeks, she'd been evicted from her apartment after her landlord saw the episode and exercised a clause about criminal activity. Within 1 month, 11 of the businesses she'd previously sued had filed countersuits demanding return of settlement payments plus damages. The criminal investigation moved forward rapidly, with prosecutors citing Judge Judy's evidence as the foundation of their case. 6 months later, Karen Davidson was convicted on 8 counts of fraud and sentenced to 4 years in state prison. She was ordered to pay full restitution to all her victims, a sum totaling over $400,000 that would follow her for the rest of her life. Her mobility scooter was seized and sold at auction, with proceeds going to Marcus Chen. Her house was foreclosed. Her car was repossessed. Everything she'd gained through 5 years of fraudulent lawsuits was stripped away, leaving her with nothing but a prison sentence and the eternal shame of being the most hated woman on the internet. Marcus Chen's life transformed in the opposite direction. His gym membership increased by 300% within 2 months as people joined specifically to support him. After seeing the episode, a GoFundMe campaign raised over $150,000 to help him expand his business and cover the costs Davidson had inflicted. He opened 2 additional locations within a year, each dedicated to providing affordable fitness options for working families. He and his wife welcomed their daughter, whom they named Judy in honor of the judge who'd saved their lives. Marcus became a vocal advocate for small business owners, speaking at conferences about the importance of fighting back against fraudulent lawsuits and never letting bullies win through intimidation. The case became a landmark moment studied in law schools across the country as an example of vexatious litigation and the importance of thorough investigation. Judge Judy's episode became her most watched ever, and she frequently cited it as one of the most satisfying cases of her entire career. The cultural impact extended far beyond one courtroom and one viral video. Businesses across the country began implementing new protocols for identifying patterns of fraudulent claims. Legal organizations created databases to track vexatious litigants, making it harder for people like Davidson to move from victim to victim without detection. Legitimate disability rights organizations publicly condemned Davidson's behavior, emphasizing how her fraud damaged the credibility of real discrimination claims and made it harder for genuine victims to seek justice. The body positivity movement distanced itself completely from her actions, with major advocates writing articles about how weaponizing social justice for personal profit betrays everything those movements stand for. Karen Davidson became a cautionary tale, a symbol of what happens when entitlement meets accountability, when arrogance encounters expertise, when someone finally says enough and has the evidence to back it up. Her one insult, those few words telling Judge Judy to mind her menopause, cost her $50,000 in immediate judgment, over $400,000 in total liability, 4 years of freedom, and any shred of dignity she had left. If you believe Karen Davidson got exactly what she deserved for her years of fraud and her outrageous disrespect, smash that like button right now and comment, "Justice served." If you think Judge Judy delivered the most satisfying courtroom destruction in television history, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another moment where entitled people learn that consequences are real and accountability is inevitable. Share this story with anyone who needs to see what happens when arrogance meets its match. Remember, respect costs nothing, but disrespect can cost you absolutely everything. Karen Davidson walked into that courtroom thinking one insult would intimidate a judge into backing down. Instead, it triggered the most thorough investigation and devastating ruling of Judge Judy's legendary career, all because she couldn't control her arrogance for just 5 more minutes. Thanks for watching. And I'll see you in the next one where another entitled person learns this exact same lesson the hard way.